Ladies and gentlemen, usually it's quite boring after lunch. I know that some of you are perhaps still eating, but we have to get on with the business. And I think this is going to be a very exciting session because water conservation is an issue that is extremely important for Bangladesh. And I'm very happy to see that now there has been a lot of talk in the government level, the ministries and the different agencies, they talked about it. Some of the initiatives like the Water Aid ORG, they have talked about it. But I somehow feel that there hasn't been enough discussions and consensus gathering in terms of going ahead with a roadmap involving the private sector as well. So I would like to first congratulate Sustainable Apparel Forum and the organizers for thinking about this very important topic and putting it in this program so that we can discuss the modalities, the challenges, the issues that are extremely important for water conservation for Bangladesh to remain sustainable. I'm very happy that a very eminent panel is here with me. I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking about the topic myself. The basic objective is to hear from them. So I would first request them to come here and give them their opinion about this subject, their perspective, and keep it brief. Let's say we have 5 of you, so maybe we can limit it to about 4 minutes. That's going to give us about 20 minutes of initial discussion, and the rest 25 minutes we can go do the follow-up questions and some questions from the audience. I would first like to invite Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden, to Charlotta, Her Excellency Charlotta Schlyter, to come and give her opening remarks. Over to you, Excellency.
Thank you very much, Asif. Now, on the part of Sweden, we're very happy to be a part of this. Clean water is an issue of destiny for Bangladesh. And when we hear that water levels are sinking and that the waterways of Bangladesh are being more and more polluted, that's a cause for concern or even perhaps alarm. And the RMG industry and the brands can, of course, be said to be part of the problem, but they can also be part of the solution. And many front runners among brands and among manufacturers have shown that this is possible. What needs to happen now is for this to become standard. And for this, many actors need to work together. Again, manufacturers, brands, government, civil society, and academia. But of course, who needs to pull is government, manufacturers, and brands. And last night, we gathered stakeholders from all these various groups, and thank you to those who were there, for a roundtable to talk about water conservation and how one could get to a roadmap to water conservation so that we don't end here with another helpful event where you take things with you, but actually what happens between the events, how do we move this forward now. So that's, of course, what I'm hoping to hear also from my co-panelists, what they think is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for your opening remarks. I would now like to request Mr. Faruque Hassan, the Honorary Consul General of the Consulate of Greece in Dhaka, Bangladesh, President of Dutch-Bangla Chamber of Commerce and Industries, but also another hat, former Senior Vice President of Bangladesh Garment Manufacturers and Exporters Association. Please go ahead, Faruque.
Thank you, Asif. a very good afternoon. We all know that ready-made garment industry is a very critically important sector in Bangladesh, contributing approximately 1/5 of the GDP, and more than 83% of our export comes from exporting apparel and employing more than 4.4 million predominantly women, and indirectly 10 million workers are working. With export over 34 billion in last financial year, and Bangladesh continues to remain the second largest apparel exporter in the world, of course, after China. The RMG sector has been a success story for Bangladesh also in terms of job generation. The sector now is the largest employer in the private sector. Continued development of the RMG sector is very critical to help Bangladesh reach its stated goal of becoming middle-income country by 2021. Globally, water is now a strategic resource for not only surviving, but also for economic development and overall socio-economic status of the country. Therefore, people used to say nowadays, water is the next oil of economic development. In recent times, we have seen in many parts of the world how people are suffering for drinking water, which is a basic human right, and can afford to deprive people from this. In South Africa, Cape Town, in India, Chennai, we have seen how everything can be changed in a water-scarce city, and the suffering we cannot even imagine being a son of this riverine delta. Looking into Bangladesh apparel industry, we can see there are a good number of factories, and most of them are not wet processing industry. The RMG factories actually not using much water because these are mostly cotton sewing industry. But the textile industry, especially the wet processing industry, means dyeing factory, the washing factory, use a lot of water. And that is very important how we should address the reduce of using this water. The good thing of these factories and supply to almost a reputed global brand, therefore they have to maintain the standard as per their global standard, which most of the cases beyond the local standard. So this is very important. We should discuss these issues today. Thank you.
Thank you, Faruque. We'll get into the discussion later on. I would like to hear from the brand, and no other brand than H&M, who talks a lot about sustainability. In short, Kiran, what's H&M's thought about this issue, and how are you thinking about going forward, involving the suppliers?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep it short, Asif. I think we'll discuss more in the panel discussions. I would like to reflect back on what Piers said in the morning. I think we have an ambition to grow in Bangladesh, and as an industry, if you have to become $50 billion, doesn't matter it's 2021 or 2030, whenever it is. But then with growth comes a lot of responsibility, and we need to make sure that's a sustainable growth, and that we don't use a lot of resources out of it. Connecting to what we have done in the supply chain is we have more than 100 units, which we have wet processing units in Bangladesh, and all of them are green rated EVPs, for example. But then we believe that it's our responsibility that we don't limit ourselves to the factory walls, but it's very important to address the water issue on a country level. That's where we need to focus also on mainly on a policy level issues, where by end of the day, I think the three things that we need to think about is ownership. I think it's important that from not only this roundtable, but all the roundtables or discussions what we have, we need to take ownership of what we're doing here now and have clear, actionable points, basically. How do we want to take this forward? This should not be a topic of discussion for today, but then next year, if we have to have this session, we need to have follow-up questions on what we have done now in this 1 year.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Fazlul bhai, enormous experience, opening remarks. You invested a lot, did you get return?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And as you already explained that we invested a lot of money in terms of saving not only water but also energy and carbon emission, many other things. And from our experience, we can tell that we are mainly focusing on the water being used in dyeing process or washing process. That also was the part of discussion we had last night in a roundtable conference. But in our factory, we also practicing in other aspect how we can really save water. And that is, I can just give an example from your real life that when we go to your basin to wash your face, you just put your taps on and you wash your face. You never calculate how many liters of water you are wasting every time you are going to wash your face. Let's say you take 1 minute, and you will be surprised to know that efficient tap, which you love to have in your basin, gives you 7 to 8 liter water per minute. It sounds very big. You can check when you go back. It is 7 to 8 liters water per minute coming out of your tap in your basin. But certainly you don't need in 1 minute 7 liter of water. If you have 1 bottle of water, sometimes it is more than enough to wash your face. And those who are even performing wudu for Muslims, and when you don't have water, 1 bottle of water even enough to complete your wudu. You have washing your face, hand, legs, and many things. But we are wasting at least 7 liter of water per minute when we are using. So in our factory, it is under control, and nobody can use more than 1.5 liter of water per minute when they use it. So these are the many other steps we can really teach our people. Not only we are practicing it, but we are also teaching our workers. Okay. 2,000 people are working there. So there are many steps, the experts will discuss. And I think that we have also a lot of opportunity, responsibility, and scope to contribute in terms to save the country, save the art. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Fazlul bhai. Anshul, opening remarks, 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Water. I think water is one of the key natural resources for any country, which has competing demands from domestic, agriculture, and industries. So if you look at the live examples, like my friend shared, Cape Town was already experienced day zero. Chennai this year experienced day zero, and the factories and industries had to be shut down to meet the domestic demand. If we talk about agriculture, Tirupur, which is the zero liquid discharge R&D center of the world, does not adopt ZLD because it makes sense. They adopted ZLD because of the regulatory requirements, which was started because of agricultural farmer agitation. So these are real risks that the industry is facing, especially water-intensive industries like leather and textile sectors. I think, and this risk is enhanced by the fact of concentrated demand. Some of the reports suggest that 70% of the wet processing in Bangladesh is concentrated in the greater Dhaka region, which is resulting in the lowering of the groundwater levels and deterioration of the quality of water. So these are all real risks. Fortunately, industries have an opportunity to mitigate this risk through adoption of sustainable best practices, through improvement of their processes, through adoption of new technologies. Sweden Textile Water Initiative has been supporting industries in Bangladesh and globally in capacity building and on-ground hand-holding in the implementation of such projects. We have worked with more than 50 plus factories in Bangladesh and 400 plus factories globally, resulting in 2.5 billion liters of water savings, around 18 million units of electricity savings, 20 meter cube of natural gas savings. The reason I'm telling you this data is because we have a question.
I'm sure you can discuss in greater detail later on.
This is the last line. So the reason I'm sharing this is because the tagline of this event is, this session is, does water has a business case? And the short answer is yes.
Thank you, Anshul. Back to the Excellency. Can you please explain the changing attitude of customers, policymakers of European countries, especially Sweden? Because we know Sweden is one of the leading countries when it comes in terms of recycling and sustainability in Europe. What is the attitude towards consumption and trade of sustainable water-efficient products?
Well, we definitely see a shift in Europe, and clearly in Sweden that's happening. People are more aware of climate and environment, and the world is also smaller. So when people hear that the groundwater in Bangladesh is sinking, they don't say, oh, well, Bangladesh is far away. They say, really, how is that going to affect people in Bangladesh long term? And how may I, as a consumer, how am I maybe affecting that by buying from consumers who are not using sustainable practices, for example? Now, the positive side of that is that if manufacturers and brands set targets on water use, that can also be noticed by consumers.
Thank you, Excellency. Now, back to you, Kiran, again. You talked a little bit about the focus or the emphasis of H&M. What are some of the future plans?
Before going to the future, I would want to speak about what we have done in Bangladesh. I think it's more than 10 years now we have initiated water efficiency programs through PACT or STWI to IFC. They have partnered with many other organizations. So through these initiatives, what we have seen is this a lot of water that could be saved in the supply chain, and we have done that through our suppliers. So going forward, what we would want to do is in 2018, we have developed our water roadmap for the year 2022. So it has mainly two components in it. One is quantity of water and the circularity of water. When we speak about quantity, what we want to do is it's mainly about reduction of 25% of production water in our supply chain. And circularity is mainly focusing on water recycling through the wastewater. So we aim at reducing 15% of the water through that, and 5% of water should be reused in different production process. So with that, what we aim at is by 2022, we would reach 40% of water reduction in our supply chain. And that we have already mentioned in our sustainability report last year, but we will also continue to report it in the years to come on the progress of what we have achieved.
Thank you, Kiran. Over to Mr. Faruque Hassan. I know we don't get to, as exporters and manufacturers, get to interact with the customers a lot. You know, we just export in and it's gone in the sea, and then we don't know, we just get paid. So do you think that the customers in Europe particularly, and also in North America, they're more aware about the issues of climate crisis? Are they thinking about it? Do they think about this when they buy the product from Bangladesh or similar destination?
Yeah, yes, I think that customers are aware of it.
Yeah.
The customer is aware of it, and even the consumer, the brands like H&M and the other brand actually working together with the BGMEA and the manufacturers here about this climate issues, about the environmental area, and we are working together, and that's why you know that with some brand and with the Dutch government, we are working, it's called PACT, Partnership on Cleaner Textile, where almost all the wet processing industries have been covered. And now, if you see that 10 years back, we used to use more than 300 liters of water to dye 1 kilo of fabric, but now the average have reduced to 80 liters. And some of the good, efficient factories are using 40 liters, but I think we need to do more, and eventually we are reducing that thing. And we are working with the other stakeholders like the dyes company, the chemical company, the machinery company, where we can reduce the water footprint. But the consumer behavior also have to be changed. They have to be, because, you know, when the consumer or the designer design a garments, they select brightest color, they select printing, and we require a lot of dyes, chemical, and eventually it's require a lot of water. So the consumer, in the Western world, they are talking about environment, but when they are designing the garments, actually, I think they don't consider about the environment. So that is area also is very.
Thank you. Thank you. Very pertinent point that you raised, the selection of colors. I think this is something we can think about going forward. Mr. Fazlul Hoque, dollars and cents. Is it a business factor, and does it give you competitive advantage?
Obviously, it is a business factor. There are two aspects I told you. That's when we save water use in the dyeing unit in particular, in place of 120 plus liter of water for dyeing 1 kilogram of fabric, now we reach around 70 to 80 depending on the colors and other factors. So obviously we can save not a lot, but a good amount of money, saving energy, saving chemical. This is one thing. But if we talk about other part, which I told during my initial remark, in general use, we also saving at least 50% of water, and we also preserving rainwater. That is also, it is not directly saving any cost, to be very honest. On the other hand, it is need much more investment even. It is being costly, but still it's a business case in that sense that we can attract many customers. That, let's say, we are running ahead of many of our competitors, and we are committed to our environment. So that is, I think, indirectly it's obviously a business case because it is attracting other buyers. But unfortunate part of this whole story is that buyers are encouraging us, but buyers are not participating in the cost chapter. No buyer, so far I know, not only the buyers I am handling, but so far I know, they are giving you nice advice, nice guidelines, sometimes nice blockage that you cannot do this and do this and do this, but they are not participating in any terms when money is concerned. So that is also an issue I think you can also think. But we did not wait for this buyer to come. We invested money and we are running it. But this is a global issue from the industry perspective.
Thank you, thank you. We need buyers to pay more for green and sustainable initiatives. Kiran, please lead the way. Over to you.
I think we see it in a different ways. When I say we have partnership with different organizations, it's mainly about how responsible we act in the country where we produce. For example, if we speak about our partnership with Water Resource Group, we have been associated. They don't want to speak. Okay, we have been associated with them. The reason why we want to be associated, and that comes with the cost, that comes with the price tag. It's not that we would want to give the money in the factories, but then we would want to be responsible in the country and bring that change. So when we associate with the Water Resource Group, we are on the steering group where we're talking about water value, where we are on the working group on water monitoring and water quality. So this is how we would want to be in the country. It's not about contributing in different terms. So it's in a different way that we contribute.
Thank you, Kiran. Anshul, from the perspective of STWI, how can you make us more profitable? Help us.
Hello? Yes. So before profits, let's talk about the cost. I think wet processing, which has the majority of the natural resource impact in the textile value chain, 70% of the wet processing cost is, up to 70% is natural resources in terms of energy, water and chemicals. I'm talking about the processing cost, not the raw material. So when you have 70% of your cost associated with natural resources, obviously the profit is also coming from there. But within the factory, I think all these natural resources are interdependent and correlated. If I have to give an example, within a textile process, if you have to add chemicals, most of the chemicals are added based on gram per liter. So the less amount of water you use, the less amount of chemicals, the less amount of heating. So I think they are very interdependent. So typically, so we talk about, as STWI, we talk about resource efficiency and not just limit ourselves to water. Typically, in an average factory, you are easily able to save around 10% of your energy, water and chemicals through low-hanging fruits. And if you start going to advanced areas like process control or capital-intensive investments, then you can easily go up to 15 to 20% as well. But that's not it. I think it also helps save the capital cost, because if you're reducing your amount of water intake or water use, you're also reducing the amount of wastewater treatment, amount of infrastructure required for wastewater treatment. So there's a lot of capital savings that we don't generally account for. And we have helped factories who have actually, where their ETP was their bottleneck in expansion. And because of their water efficiency and ETP optimization, they were able to expand their production without even investing in their wastewater treatment. So there are ways, and we are happy to contribute. We are doing our bit there. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think good initiatives. I think Kiran mentioned about the Partnership for Cleaner Textiles. Also, Faruque Hassan mentioned. It really did have some very good results, almost 15 brands, 300 factories were part of it, and significant amount of savings has been achieved. 21.54 billion liters of water. I think that's quite a significant result that has been achieved from that project. Then, of course, we had the Textile Sustainability Platform. I think there also, in terms of policy agenda, we addressed and we achieved success in, getting the $200 million Green Transformation Fund. The investments that we talked about, Fazlul Hoque talked about requiring more money for these initiatives. It's about time that we use these funds and get all the bottlenecks that are associated with these funds away so that manufacturers can access it. The project has also been able to decrease the customs duty on 52 machinery items, which are good for sustainable practices in the industry. So good practices are there. Perhaps we can scale it up. I would like to now go to the audience and ask some questions about what do you think about the topic? What is your opinion? Is it a business factor? Can companies be competitive? So 3 questions. If anybody has any question, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, choose your panelist and ask your question. Anyone? No interest? Everybody too sleepy after lunch? Good lunch though. Thanks to the organizers. No questions. I see the Marks and Spencer lady walking in. Okay, go ahead. Can we have a microphone there? Is there a microphone there? Go ahead. We're losing time. Go ahead.
Hello. So my question is to H&M, Mr. Kiran. I mean, I'm Prasad Pant from ZDHC. We all talked about the price or the money. And we all know manufacturers are under pressure from brands to do a lot of things. But they don't participate, as the Managing Director of Plummy Fashions said. My question to you is that how do you connect the sustainability issues such as water conservation into your source strategy?
Addressed to Kiran and...
Kiran.
Okay, Kiran.
How do you connect these sustainability issues such as, say, water conservation into your... into your sourcing strategy?
Okay, when we speak about sustainability from H&M point of view, it's not only water, but then there is huge big circle of sustainability. So we have different focus areas. What Pia mentioned in the morning is that it could be on industrial relations, water, energy, and many other. So there are certain parameters that each and every manufacturer has to fulfill before we even consider them into our supply chain. We call them as minimum requirements. At the same time, as and when manufacturers start to be associated with us, we do have certain expectations based on the performance on different aspects. It could be on fashion, it could be on logistics and sustainability. They don't want me to speak anymore. Okay. We call it supplier relationship management. It's SRM in short. So that's how our business partners are assessed, and it comes with demands as well as commitments. We call it demands and commitments on the SRM process. So that's basically how we manage our supply chain. I hope that answers your question.
That's a very strategic answer by Kiran, but I think he's trying to get the message across. We all have to look at the real scenario and, see how we go. But any more questions? If not, I'm going to get back to the panelists for final opinions. Any more questions? No more questions. Okay, so let's get back to the panel again. We have about 8 minutes. Final opinion, if you want to summarize water conservation, business factor, competitiveness, going forward, what needs to happen? 1 minute.
I think the key words will be collaboration and joint action. Because if we want to achieve the national and global sustainability goals, we need to work together. It's not a one organization's job, neither one factory, nor one brand, nor one development agency. I think STWI, along with our brand partners and factory partners, we have demonstrated that when different partners different stakeholders come together, change can happen, positive impact can be done, and best practices can be improved in factories. And our objective is to enable sector-level shift and mass adoption. Frankly, we would like to be redundant, and we would like the local capabilities and the factories be able to help themselves. And I think that is a stage that all of us are working towards. But it cannot happen alone. It cannot happen in a minute. So I think collaboration and fast joint actions. I think just to summarize in the last line, I feel faster action and harmonization of action is the key. So
Okay.
That's my thing.
Mr. Fazlul Hoque.
I think comment would be more or less same, but I would like to be very specific that it would not be correct that if we only think that if only the textile people are the liable for this whole issue. I think we have to make it a social issue, and that's come from the policymaker together with all the stakeholder, and make it a social issue. And okay, we are the part of the society, and everybody has to take his responsibility, play his I think very responsible role towards his responsibility fixed in the policy to water conservation. That's it.
Okay. Excellency.
Thank you. Well, for us as Sweden, as a development partner, we have been involved and we supported, for example, the initiative that looked into, through CV, ways of conserving water. And it turned out, as you mentioned, it's very successful. And so we're more than happy to look at what more we can do for the mechanisms that do exist to be used in various ways. It's also technology from Swedish industry that's cutting edge, not only for water conservation, but also for energy. And as been mentioned, these two hang together, energy and water. There's no separating them. But it is a good question, and I come back to what I said before. Roadmap, how do we take this beyond events like this? Also because there are so many different stakeholders. How can we pull this together and move forward? So I leave that for the remaining speakers.
Thank you. Faruque Hassan, roadmap, going forward, what to do?
I think from the industry side, from the production people, I think we have to do reduce, reuse, and recycle. And I believe that reduce and quite remarkable progress, but recycle and reuse, that's from the perspectives, the other side, like from the buyer, we have to have a more collaboration from the development partner and from the buyer. And finally, from the consumer part, the consumer also have also their part to support these things, because sustainability alone cannot do the manufacturers here. So that's the area also we need support, because you have seen that in Bangladesh, the ready-made garment industry, textile industry, especially in last 10 years, have done a lot of investment. We have done workplace safety and other area. Sustainability is there, but we need support from the brand and the consumer to make more sustainable of this industry.
Thank you. Kiran, you already talked about it from H&M's perspective, but a little bit more in general would be nice.
Yeah, I think I'd like to contradict my own statement when I said in my opening remarks, I think water is abundantly available here in Bangladesh. When I say it's available, it's in terms of regulatory, because it's very important that we need to have regulatory measures on how do we abstract water and how do we use it in the production process. That good example, what you mentioned, Anshul, on Tirupur. I was there in India that time. It's many of the mills and bleaching units got shut down because there was no water. I think we should not take that path. It's important that we need to advocate towards having policy changes. That's very, very important. And then we collectively all together have a role to play in that as stakeholders for this textile industry here. So again, I would like to reiterate the point in saying that we need to take actions. We have, maybe I would want to steal from Frank, action, collaboration, and transformation. I think that's also applicable here for the environment.
Thank you very much. Do we have audience poll results? Are we still doing it? Anybody from the organizers? Because I'm supposed to ask you to put it up on the screen. I guess we didn't take audience poll. Everybody's too sleepy after lunch, like I said. No, thank you all very much, the panelists. I think we've had an excellent interaction about the topic, water conservation. Is it a business factor in Bangladesh? I positively always feel that the Bangladeshi entrepreneurs, when it comes to green and sustainable initiatives, somehow or the other, I think we have an inherent ambition to go for greener initiatives. The example of that is, in the number of LEED certified factories that we have in this country. We have fabulous state-of-the-art green factories in this country. Fazlul Hoque, he's got a brilliant green factory. He's just set up another one. And he's making all these investments because I think we have it in ourselves to think about the environment, think about the nature, think about the country, its resources. Resource management is going to be extremely important going forward. And the 200 factories that were part of the 300 factories that were part of the Partnership for Cleaner Textiles program, these were mainly dyeing houses. One of my factory was also part of this process, Newage Textiles Limited. And I could see that they spontaneously engaged. So once the effort and the intention is there from the industry, it is now up to the donors and the brands and the policymakers to collaborate and ensure, again, as I have mentioned, I still have 57 seconds according to the clock. Please don't ring the bell. If there is collaboration and joint initiatives made together, I think we can make a difference. So let's take that message, scale up the good practices that has taken place, collaborate, enable us, and get us access to green funds, which we can source at 3-4%, because 13-14% is not going to be good at all. With those closing words, I once again thank my distinguished panel. All of you have contributed fabulously. And I thank the audience for listening to us. I know it was difficult, but thank you all very much, and thank to the organizers for arranging this beautiful event. I always possess a very high opinion about Mustafiz and the work that he's doing. Please keep it up. A round of applause, I tell you, for Sustainable Apparel Forum and denim experts. These guys do a fabulous job. And for the first time, and after a very long time, BGMEA has been associated with this. So I think that's all very good. Thank you all very much.